Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Mess. So today we're going to continue the series on the MiSTer FPGA DE10 Nano project. I got a fun and unexpected video for you guys this Sunday evening because SRG320 has committed the second Sega Saturn update in this week. It's so much fun to see Saturn getting worked on again and knowing SRG320 is good, and now the work is coming in fast and furious. And it's been such an epic month of January for Saturn in general, with some new games that have come out and some new prototypes have been found. This is MiSTer FPGA specific, but Saturn is having a renaissance in 2024. So let's move on to some of the games that started working, or different modes in them started working. I have showed you Sega Rally before on the channel, and the single player mode was always functioning perfectly fine. But if you tried to go into two player mode, the split screen heads up race, it would pretty much freeze or continue to never load. Now with the new updates to fix some things with the RAM, this is 100% playable, and big thanks to Andy D and his wife Erin for doing a two-player match here. I got in the download notes that Erin was a little bit worried that she wasn't performing as well, but Erin, I found out watching the footage, Andy was riding you off the road. He did you dirty the whole time, and had he raced fair, I'm pretty sure you would have won. But if you want to play against an opponent in Sega Rally 2 on the current Sega Saturn core, you're going to be 100% able to do so today. Now do be aware, this is not an update all yet. This is still manual install from the MiSTer FPGA Discord under the unstable nightlies category. So if you do run update all, you're still going to be on the October core, which seems to be tripping a few people up. I'm not sure when that commit is going to be added into update all, but hopefully soon, and I'll leave a note in a video when that actually happens. But the performance here just seems like real Sega Saturn hardware. The sound is good, the sound effects are good, the performance is there, and obviously split screen mode is working. And before, like I said, if you tried to even go into this, it would basically just freeze the core and you would have to reset it. Now you can get as many two-player games in as you want. And this being one of the best racing games on the Sega Saturn, it's great to have more features here too. What it seems like is SRG320 rewrote some of the portions of RAM. And if you don't remember from last year's testing, like in the middle of the year, depending on what RAM module you would have better or worse success getting certain games to run. And while that all seemed to be buttoned up with a RAM rewrite portion of the core fall of last year, there were still some issues in the loading across RAM. That seems to be 100% taken care of here, at least in the games I am showing you. Now this was all basically tested on single RAM outside of one example that I'll save for a later video, but the delineation between the single RAM build and the dual RAM build is basically non-existent at this point in time. You can 100% use the single RAM core, and it seems to do as good of a job as dual RAM does. So I'm assuming once this core is done, it'll be a single RAM experience unless you want to throw 2 sticks of RAM on it. So that does seem to be a fun development, but again, it's not done, so we'll have to wait and see. And Andy D up top there seemed to lose a little bit of the traction on the back end, just commenting because I didn't play the game, and it is fun. But it's so great to see these things improve, and it's so great to get multiple core updates in a week. It's starting to move at the same speed as something like Nintendo 64, where Robert will do 2 or 3 cores in a row. Now it might be a couple days till we get the next update, it might be a couple months, we're never quite sure when things are going to happen, but we're always excited to see them. And just look at the speed and fluidity of this capture right here and the gameplay. This is feeling like it is up to the same speed, the same pars as real Sega Saturn hardware, but of course you have it in FPGA with all the enhancements and HDMI out that you get from there. So if you've been waiting to play some Sega Rally, you want to get some 2-player matches in, it seems like this current core is the one for you. And it did fix a couple other games as well and make some improvements that I would say this is the most drastic one, having an entire game mode that didn't used to work before that now does. And of course we got like 5 or 6 newly working games on the last core as well, so that is also awesome to get this stuff. It's always fun to see games that didn't used to work suddenly start working. Now on the front of games that did work but are vastly improved with the newest cores, Die Hard Arcade. I say this every time I show footage, but I think this is one of the best 3D beat-em-ups ever made, and definitely the best 3D beat-em-up on the Sega Saturn. Last time we talked about this game, it had a lot of sound issues and a few hitches here and there in the performance. Performance-wise, this looks, feels, and seems just like the Die Hard Arcade everyone knows and loves, and the good thing is it now has audio all throughout the game. It used to be that the soundtrack would drop out and you would just get these weird noises. I did have to lift the audio levels because they are still quiet, but go ahead and listen for like 45 seconds and I'll be right back. There's still a little bit of background scratchiness in the audio, but the fact that we actually have audio now is the big deal on these cores. This used to be a game where you'd get audio for like the first second or two, it would drop out, and you'd be playing the game basically mute the entire time. The performance would be there for the most part, but obviously a lot of the game is the sound effects and the soundtrack. But today you 100% get that in Die Hard Arcade. You just need to lift the audio volume up. But do be aware that you should always start with the audio volume down still, because some cores will definitely clip out on some of the sound samples, so don't run this at normal volume and then try to go from there. Make sure you start quiet and then lift your audio volumes up. Now moving on to Fighters Megamix, this was a game that did work again, but it's another one of those games that improvements were found on the newest core as of yesterday. There was a lot of hitching in the performance. You would get random slowdowns here and there. Now you might still see a slowdown every once in a while. The performance on this game is vastly improved over the last time we covered it. And if you do see the interlacing lines, that's because this runs in the 480i mode or high resolution mode that Sega Saturn could do. And in the future, maybe I'll run this through the RetroTink 4K and use some of that motion adaptive deinterlacing to knock down on that. But I want you to see what it actually looks like on MiSTer FPGA hardware because of that interlacing. And it's just one of those things. A lot of the games that used to work are just seeing better performance across the board, and pretty much all of these issues have been documented in previous cores. When a new core comes out, a group of people go ahead on Discord and start testing the things we know were issues previously, and they become so much better from there. And Fighters Megamix is definitely one that it's improved. There's a couple other improved games as well, and I'm going to save for the next testing video because this is already 13.5 minutes long, and I didn't want to bring it up to a 20-minute video because there's a big drop off in the end. So be aware that in maybe like 3 or 4 days I will update this video again with more games that just work. But if you have testing requests, leave them down below so I can start grabbing some of those old captures again, seeing how they're doing on new hardware. But Fighters Megamix is always a really fun game, just a combination basically of Virtual Fighter, fighting Vipers, and sheer absurdity as well. And again today on the core, this is getting to be a very near to perfect experience. Now of course if you were to play this game on a CRT television, you wouldn't really be seeing the interlacing lines, so sometimes on the 480i games I actually think they don't look as good as using a CRT television. But if you did take analog out, and it is still non-final on pretty much all of the Saturn core, and you put this into a PVM, it would look better. But the performance is there. That hitching when things would happen is definitely reduced down, and for the most part I really don't see it here much anymore, and that is great. The games that run on the core are getting higher and higher percentage-wise every single time a new core comes out, and the games that have had performance issues are definitely getting patched up. The one thing that didn't seem to get any improvements was Pandemonium. That game is still a weird slideshow, and no one's quite sure why. But any game where you can fight as a gigantic immovable bear with a cowboy hat on is an 11-10 in my book. Definitely play this one if you haven't. Now moving over to Space Harrier, Andy decaptured this and he did have some trouble getting it running, but he did finally get it to run, and it was running smoothly and the sound was great as well. This is a game that definitely would have a lot of hitching in previous cores, but the performance now seems to be much smoother, and that's what these rewrite cores seem to be. With the RAM improvements, it seems to be maybe there was a timing issue, or maybe even the data not getting where it needed to be on certain games and a certain time window, because now it is a much better, and the sound again near to perfect. Listen, and I'll be right back. Sounds really good to my ear, but leave me a comment down below and tell me what you think. And you'll see as we move on to stage 2 again, the loading is much smoother. It used to be that if you could get this game running and you could get it running without the hitching, once you went from one stage to the other, it was very likely that it was going to freeze on the load. Now that seems to be 100% buttoned up, but I'm sure there's other examples that we haven't found yet of games that have improved on the current core, because unlike the Nintendo 64 core, there's a much bigger library to go through on Sega Saturn, thousands upon thousands of games, versus the Nintendo 64, which you're underneath 300 examples. So if you do know of anything that's improved on the recent core this week and I haven't seen it yet, leave me a comment down below and tell me, because I depend on you guys for testing as well and giving me some updated information, because even if I wanted to, I probably even couldn't get through 50 testing games in a week if I tried. But if you want to play Space Harrier today, it is there for you to give it a go, and definitely you should do that. Now moving over to a Capture Octane sent me, I don't care what people say, I think he's alright. Hyperduel here is another improved game. This game always had problems. It didn't have any sound last time we checked it out, and it definitely had some freezing issues. That seems to be, again, 100% fixed up in the current core. So if there's a game that you've been wanting to play on MiSTer FPGA on the Saturn side that you haven't been able to get to work as of yet, this is the time to try it out now. So many games that wouldn't work or had sound issues or freezing or loading issues seem to have been improved on this current core. It's getting to the point now where for a handful of games it feels exactly like real hardware, and that is absolutely great. It's just so fun to see SRG320 able to update this again, and knowing his situation is way more stabilized at this point in time. And if you've never played Hyperduel, definitely check it out. It is a ton of fun. It's a great shmup on a system that is known for having great 2D shmups, and having the audio makes such a big difference. A lot of what shmups are outside of the challenge and fun factor is they always have great soundtracks, and that's the thing about the Saturn core. When you didn't have music, it was fun to see it run, but I really don't want to play Die Hard Arcade without getting the fun soundtrack and sound effects underneath it. Same thing with something like Hyperduel. It's just a better performance core, it's just a better audio core, and that is where we're getting to be on the Sega Saturn core in general. It's improvements and more games working, and it seems like now we're probably going to start seeing some more cores relatively quicker than we did before. But again, one last note, because I know people love to skip around, this, as of the recording of this video, 12:30 on Sunday, is not an update all yet. So it may come next week, it may come next month, it may come in 3 months from now, but I do see a lot of comments asking why you guys aren't seeing the newest core and update all. It is still just a manual installation, but it's as quick as dragging a file to a folder, so trust me, if you don't think you can pull it off, you can 100% do it. But again, Hyperduel, 100% improved, great game, and definitely check it out. But that's the current slate of tests on the Sega Saturn core, and if you want to see anything specific, leave me a request down below and I will try to get to each and every one of them. And on a complete random, inane, and hilarious side note, when I started this channel, the recording was number 1, and I've recorded in sequential numbers since then. This is take 42,069, and that just makes me a very, very happy person for no good reason other than I think I might still be 13 years old. But I figured you guys would want to know because it's a small channel milestone. Short of that, go play some Sega Saturn. Hope you guys are having a great weekend. I'll do some more tests next week, but it's Saturn time, so go play. Bye-bye.